Today we're going to talk about keto adaptation. Whenever you go on a ketogenic diet, what happens in your body? We're just going to go through a cascade of events so that you know what's happening if you go on a ketogenic diet, or if somebody asked you, why did I lose weight all of a sudden in the first couple days? Whenever you are keto adapting, keto adaptation, that's just whenever you have chronically elevated levels of ketones in your bloodstream. You start to have these changes. Also, you need low levels of glucose. Chronic fasting, you can become keto adapted off and on. And then even better, a very low carbohydrate ketogenic diet. Typically, 70% of your calories are from fat, 20 to 25% from protein. That can go lower if you have some specific condition that you may need to lower your protein. And then 5 to 10% from carbohydrates. Typically, you want to get your fiber in those carbohydrates. Some foods that you can eat: meat, high-fat dairy products, healthy oils, nuts and seeds, especially the low-carb ones, eggs, low-sugar vegetables. Usually leafy greens are a safe way to go. You want to get a lot of those. What happens whenever you restrict your carbohydrates? First, you're going to decrease your glucose, your blood glucose levels, the blood sugar levels, because you're not taking in dietary carbohydrate. So glucagon, pancreas senses low glucose levels, and whenever it senses that, it releases glucagon. If it senses high glucose levels, it's going to release insulin. So you start having a high glucagon, low insulin ratio, and this is going to put you into a state of breakdown, because it's going to sense that your glucose levels are low, and you need to maintain your glucose levels because certain cells have to have glucose. Red blood cells, parts of the central nervous system, they have to have glucose, so you have to maintain your glucose levels. Glucagon is going to help that happen. You're not just going to pass out if you stop eating carbohydrates. So you have about 100 grams of glycogen stored in your liver. You have about 400 grams of glycogen stored in your skeletal muscle, so that's 500 grams total. Well, that's going to become depleted. It's going to become depleted so that it can fuel low blood glucose levels. Once that happens, you might lose up to 4 pounds. 1 gram of glycogen is connected to 3 grams of water. So if you're losing 500 grams of glycogen, 500 times 3 is 1,500 grams of water. That's 2,000 grams, or 2 kilograms. So you could lose up to 4.5 pounds just from glycogen and water. You might want to increase your sodium levels. A lot of people will drink some type of broth whenever they first start a ketogenic diet because it's high in sodium. And then you also have calcium excretion. This is still up in the air if this stops becoming excreted, so that's one thing you might want to supplement with. Studies have shown sodium and potassium levels to balance out after a couple weeks, so you might not have to supplement with sodium for so long. And then you start having increased fatty acid oxidation, and this is because you have high glucagon levels. So the fats in your adipose tissues start to become mobilized even faster and break down, and then you have fatty acids to be able to be used for fuel. You've just depleted your glycogen, but you still need to maintain your blood glucose levels. Gluconeogenesis can do this in the liver, and this is just converting non-glucose sources into glucose, so like proteins into glucose, to maintain your blood glucose levels. And then you have ketogenesis in the liver, and this is whenever you have high fat breakdown. Those fats partially get broken down in the liver and then get to be turned into ketones. And now they've talked about ketones being muscle sparing. That's because ketones can fuel your brain, they can fuel all of your tissues, and so it can help maintain your blood glucose levels. So the glucose doesn't have to fuel 100% of your brain energy requirements. So then gluconeogenesis can decrease a little bit. So you might not break down as much protein or whatever to fuel your blood glucose levels. Ketogenesis increases, so then circulating ketone bodies are going to increase. And chronically high levels of circulating ketone bodies cause these MCT1 transporters to be increased. And that's not MCT oil. I get that question a lot. It's they just have the same name. MCT transporters, that's what transports ketones from your bloodstream into the cells to be used for fuel. You could have very high levels of ketones in your bloodstream, but if you can't get them into the cells, then it's useless because we want to use those ketones for energy. So a rate-limiting step to becoming keto-adapted is building these transporters, and the way to get this is to have chronically elevated levels of ketones in your bloodstream. Once you have this increase in transporters, you're going to increase your capacity to use ketone bodies. And then also, you're going to be able to use fatty acids a lot better. Some tissues prefer fats, like your muscle, and then some tissues prefer ketones, like your heart and your intestines and parts of your brain. To provide fats, glucose, and ketones to your heart would probably prefer to use the ketones and take those up. That was keto adaptation. That's what happens whenever you first go on a ketogenic diet.